So Adam, friend of the pod, Jackson Flickinger of FearTheSword.com asks, is it time to worry about the Cavs' three-point defense?
We talked about it in the last clip a little bit, that their defense seems to be a little suspect over the last 20 games or so. But really, statistically, the way that Jackson has it broken down here, it's not so much effort. They're giving the effort. It has more to do with just luck. And the teams that they're facing over these last 15 games or so are just hitting contested shots. A lot of the time, they are rotating off and getting open looks from screens. But for the most part, I think that the league itself has now become a three-point shooting contest. And that if you're a team that cannot shoot it and defend it, then you're not going to be able to compete. And frankly, this season we've been a lot better at shooting it than I expected us to be. I thought we'd struggle more, especially somebody like Mitchell coming in and shooting the lights out the way that he has.
Yeah.
Typically, people that join our team forget how to shoot threes. But the three-point shot, unfortunately, it's here to stay as being kind of the dominant shot of the game nowadays. And I loved it as a kid because it was that game changer. It could be something of like a big momentum shift, and all of a sudden you get 2 threes, and now you've got a cushiony lead. But with today's league of shooting 40 threes in a game, there's no such thing as a cushiony lead anymore. You just have to hope that you can get around and defend and block these shots. And I think that this article highlights something that I've been thinking for several years now, which is that the elevation of skill at being able to shoot the ball in the NBA across the board, whether you're a center all the way down to a point guard, has just gone through the roof. That anybody now can shoot the lights out. And you really, even if you contest shots, there's a good chance that they're still going to go in. And that's a reason why even without the D'Antoni run offenses, right, you still have high-scoring games in the NBA because these guys just are so much more proficient at shooting it.
Yeah, I think that some of it is also just bad luck for the Cavs right now. I think that the opponent's averages and percentages will drop down. They'll lower somewhat. They'll even out just because that's how statistics work. But at the same time, I do think that there's a little bit of a issue with execution in their defense where they allow players like Damian Lillard and Julius Randle to stay hot because of how their defense works. And I just think that that's something that the coaching staff needs to adjust a little bit, where they need to close out on those players a few possessions in a row, or JB needs to call a timeout right away to stop a player from continuing that shooting. And that's more of a mindset shift when you're out on the floor, and they're not always going to think that way. They're going to pay attention to other things, but at the same time, when you're watching some of these players just put up 40 points or have career nights against us and they're shooting that well from the outside, you wish that they would just have a guy stick on that player's hip or get in that person's face. But we understand too that the defensive effort and the scheme is a team, it's a team initiated aspect of the game. So they're not going to move away from their defense, but I do think it is a slight adjustment that they're going to have to make occasionally in some games. And we might see that in the next few. I know they're playing the Oklahoma City Thunder soon. They have some solid shooters where they could win the game just from the outside, even though they're kind of a lackluster team, just because of how the Cavs defense works. And my hope is they would have some adjustment of having Allen come out on that screen or do a closeout quicker. And then the last thing I'll say, just because I feel like you and I have kind of harped on it a lot, is I think one thing that is negatively affecting the defense is Kevin Love's play. I think that his defense, he cannot rotate as quickly. He cannot close out as quickly as other players on the floor. And as we've alluded to in the last few episodes and even the last couple of clips, they need to handle the Love situation delicately, but he has to figure out what's going on with him to be a better, consistent player for this team.
Yeah, it looks to me like he's lost his legs and he can no longer reach the apex of his shot anymore. And so he's shorting it a lot, and he's struggling like a guy at the end of his career would struggle. So I'm really hoping that's not the case and he can pull something out before the end of the year. Another point that you made that I think was right on, Julius Randle in the Knicks game, he was 8 for 11, I think, from 3, but right before that, when he was 7 for 10 or whatever, they let him have an open 3 that was kind of a dagger in that moment for us coming back in the game. And I would say you're right. I've seen a lot of that. To start the game, these guys are making a lot of contested shots, but by the end of the game, we start to get a little bit slower in our execution, and then now you're leaving guys open that have been able to get hot all night long.
Right.
And so Jordan Poole or any of those guys that are just eating us alive, and there seems to be nothing we can do to stop them. And another thing, too, is we've kind of prematurely gained recognition within this league as a team everybody wants to beat, even though we're not one of the best teams yet. Yeah. So that's another thing, too, that I think a lot of teams are coming out trying their best, and really, they know that it will mean a lot for ESPN that night to say, oh, this team knocked off the Cavs, who everybody thinks is going to be great. So.
Yeah, and the other thing I would add on there is, even though the defense, I think, has been solid, you're right in the sense that it has been soft at times or a little porous, they still, around the league, they are known to have 3 really good defenders in Okoro, Allen, and Mobley. And so I think that's the other thing that's a little bit of a mixed bag with how people are shooting so well against us from the outside is, you're seeing on television, you're seeing and saying how they're getting these baskets, but you're saying to yourself, well, why aren't we utilizing Mobley in a different way? Why aren't we having Allen come out? We've seen him guard point guards and stuff like that. Why aren't we utilizing Okoro or even bringing in Stevens occasionally to just pester people more? And again, I don't know, the NBA season is so jam-packed that these coaches can only get so much information into these players' brains before a game to talk about tendencies of their opponent, to understand, how to break down the other team's defense and handle their offense. And I just think that there might be even a little bit of a communication mix-up with how they need to be making some of these players more uncomfortable, because I doubt that JB is saying like, no, let Dame hit it from there. No, just let him. I doubt it's that way, but I'm sure he is, whatever he is communicating or emphasizing, something's getting missed in translation. Yeah.
And man, I wish the NBA could bring back the double team, but just seems like that's out the window nowadays, since everybody can shoot. So what do? You can't go and get man up, or you can't go and put 2 guys on Julius Randle, because then he'll kick it off to another person and then they'll make the 3 from the corner. So it's tough. All good suggestions of what they might be able to do, especially rotating Allen out, getting somebody taller out front.
Thank you for listening to the Cavaliers Basketball Club podcast. Let's go Cavs!